After Natalie stood me up for the 5th time at the marriage registration office, I decisively blocked all her contact info. If friends invited me to a gathering and she was going to be there, I'd turn it down without hesitation. If I knew she frequented a certain coffee shop, I'd rather take a detour than walk past it. Company outings that included her, I'd immediately apply for leave. Even on New Year's Eve, when she showed up at my door with holiday gifts, I pretended not to be home. I didn't answer her calls, didn't reply to her messages. I vanished completely from her world. I used to have my whole heart tied to her, my emotions rising and falling with her every move. It wasn't until the 5th time she stood me up that I finally snapped out of it. I don't want to live like this anymore. If being repeatedly abandoned is my only option, I'd rather live peacefully on my own. Chapter 1. Natalie once again left me at the marriage registry because of her childhood best friend. I sent her a message, no reply. I called her, no answer. The office was filled with cheerful, loving couples registering their marriages, while I sat alone on a bench like an outcast. When the phone finally connected, it wasn't even Natalie, it was Victor's voice that came through. Kevin, sorry man, I got scratched by a stray cat, and Natalie's with me at the hospital for a rabies shot. He sounded completely justified, even a little smug, like someone who's used to being spoiled. This made it the 5th time Natalie had stood me up. The last time, Victor twisted his ankle, and she rushed him to the hospital. The time before that, it started raining, and she ran off to bring him an umbrella. The time before that, Victor was drunk in a bar in the middle of the day, and she couldn't get there fast enough to pick him up. All 5 times, every single one, was because of Victor, her childhood sweetheart, and every time, she didn't hesitate to leave me behind for him. The registry office was about to close when a staff member walked over and gently asked, "Sir, are you still planning to register today?" I shook my head softly. No. She kindly reminded me, if today's inconvenient, you can always come back another day. No need, I said calmly. I won't be coming back, ever. The previous 5 times, I always felt furious, unwilling to accept it. But today, the moment I heard Victor's voice, I suddenly felt at peace. No panic over the idea of Natalie leaving me. No more hysterical questions or accusations. Just quiet clarity. As I typed a single message to Natalie, "We're done." Then I blocked her number and WeChat. Just like that. It's over. Chapter 2. Not wanting to go home. I wandered aimlessly through the streets until I eventually pushed open the door of a coffee shop on the corner. It wasn't until the familiar smell of coffee and the soft sounds of blues and jazz greeted me that I suddenly realized this was Natalie's favorite place. How ironic. Even when trying to avoid her, I instinctively chose a place she liked. Natalie and I worked at the same company. To be honest, she was the one who pursued me. I still remember the day she joined as a new employee, arms full of documents. She crashed right into my chest. She told me later, it was that very moment she decided I was the one. She said I looked handsome, clean-cut, gentle, and competent, every trait matching her ideal type perfectly. At the time, I just found this clumsy girl kind of amusing, so I casually accepted her friend request on WeChat. After that, Natalie started bringing me homemade lunches from time to time and often invited me out. Eventually, we naturally ended up together. 2 months into our relationship, I once called her, only to hear a man's voice pick up. I thought I had dialed the wrong number, but the voice on the other end spoke in a familiar tone and addressed me directly. "You're Kevin, right? I'm Victor. Natalie's in the kitchen cooking noodles for me. She'll call you back in a bit." In the background, I could hear Natalie humming cheerfully and the clattering of pots and pans. That was the moment I found out about Victor. At first, I assumed he was a relative, but Natalie told me he was her childhood neighbor, someone she grew up with. He had been studying abroad and only recently returned after graduation. She spoke lightly of it, but a man's intuition lit up inside me. Something about this didn't feel so simple. The next time we had a date, I finally met Victor in person. He was much taller than Natalie, casually dressed but clearly selective in his style, with an easygoing, handsome face that gave off an air of devil-may-care charm. What really caught my eye was that from the restaurant entrance all the way to our table, his hand never left Natalie's shoulder. During the meal, they took turns serving food to each other, peeling shrimp, picking out fish bones. Natalie left me completely sidelined, lavishing all her care and attention on Victor. They sat on the same side of the booth, close and familiar, not like neighbors, but more like a couple. I, the actual boyfriend, felt like an unnecessary third wheel. I forced down the discomfort in my chest, kept a polite smile on my face, and glanced at Victor. "Looks like you two are closer than I thought," I said casually. Victor chuckled, meeting my gaze without a shred of restraint. "Don't get me wrong, Kevin. Natalie and I are childhood sweethearts. We just know each other better than anyone else." He emphasized the word anyone, making it clear, compared to him, I was the outsider. Then he suddenly leaned toward Natalie and added, half joking, "Natalie, I told you not to drag me here." See, Kevin's getting jealous. Natalie frowned slightly at that and replied, "Don't be ridiculous. Kevin's not that petty." But even as she said it, her hands didn't stop moving. She dropped a perfectly peeled shrimp into Victor's bowl like it was second nature. From then on, every time Natalie and I had a date, Victor would always, conveniently, have something come up. One day it was a cold and a fever. The next, he forgot his house key. Then it was stomach pains. Time and time again, whenever Victor called, no matter how much I needed Natalie, she would leave me without hesitation to go to him. Uncomfortable with how close she was to Victor, I finally confronted her. "Can't you and Victor keep a bit more distance?" But Natalie just brushed it off. "Victor's been abroad so long, he's just more open. Besides, we grew up together. If there were really something between us, we would have been a couple already." Victor had made several blatant provocations, almost outright declaring that he and Natalie were more than what she claimed. But Natalie always acted so calm, so unbothered, that I didn't know how to challenge it without sounding insecure. Chapter 3. After killing some time outside, I came home and noticed a pair of women's high heels by the entrance. I recognized them. They were the ones I had bought for Natalie. Even though we didn't live together, I had given her a spare key to my place. She was curled up on the couch in the living room, taking a nap. When she heard the door open, she slowly opened her eyes. She didn't look well. I walked past her without a word, hung up my coat, and headed straight into the kitchen to start cooking, completely ignoring her presence. Her voice was hoarse as she spoke. "Kevin, why did you block me on WeChat and stop answering my calls?" I tied on an apron and replied calmly. "I sent you a message. I said, we're done." Natalie let out a sigh. "All because I couldn't make it to register the marriage with you." "I'm sorry." Victor really did get scratched by a stray cat. The wound was deep. The 5th time, I cut her off, the knife in my hand landing on the cutting board with a heavy thud. "Natalie, this is the 5th time you've stood me up because of him." She froze, then gave me a look of disbelief. "But nothing happened those other times. Why are you suddenly making a big deal out of it now?" When I turned around, I saw the genuine confusion on her face. She truly didn't think there was anything wrong with what she'd done. The tomatoes on the cutting board were now a mess. Juice splattered everywhere, just like my self-restraint finally crumbling into pieces. "So Victor can summon you anytime, anywhere, but I can't even get you to return one phone call. Is Victor the only person left on this planet who can help him? You really think it's reasonable for someone who has a boyfriend to drop everything to take care of him?" Natalie was silent for a moment, as if trying to avoid a fight. "Kevin, you're too emotional right now. I don't want to argue, but you know, Victor and I grew up together." I let out a laugh, cold and sharp. "That same excuse again. Right. You grew up together, so that gives him the right to wedge himself into our relationship. That gives you the right to stand me up again on the day we were supposed to register our marriage. Natalie, be honest with yourself. For the past few years, who's really been your boyfriend?" The kitchen suddenly went dead silent. Only the slow drip from a loose faucet echoed in the empty space. Natalie's eyes darted away. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I shut my eyes tightly. The storm of emotion inside me began to recede, leaving behind only a profound sense of exhaustion. I walked to the front door and opened it. "You should go. Forget the marriage license. We're done." Natalie's head snapped up, her eyes filled with disbelief. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." I picked up the spare key she had left on the shoe cabinet. "Now please leave." She stayed rooted to the spot, her face full of confusion, as if she couldn't understand what I was saying. My patience finally worn thin. I gently grabbed her wrist, firm enough to be final, not enough to hurt, and guided her out the door. "Kevin," she finally snapped out of it, panic creeping into her voice. "Are you crazy? Just because of something this small?" I didn't answer. I simply closed the door behind her. My biggest feeling in this entire relationship with Natalie: exhaustion. I was just too tired. And now, I don't want to be tired anymore. It's time to cut my losses while I still can. Chapter 4. That night, I barely slept, half dreaming, half awake. All I could see was Natalie and Victor. I dragged myself out of bed to wash up, only to be startled by the men in the mirror, sunken eyes, messy stubble. I looked like a heartbroken drifter. 3 years of devotion, and all I got in return was this pathetic wreck of a man. I inwardly scolded myself. Was a worthless relationship really worth all this torment? Since things had come to this, I should end it like a man, with finality and dignity. I splashed a handful of ice-cold water on my face, shaved clean, and put on a crisp, ironed shirt. The person in the mirror finally looked somewhat like his former self again. A friend called me. "Kevin, same old place tonight for the get-together. Don't you dare ditch us again just to hang out with your girlfriend." I instinctively asked if Natalie would be there. He chuckled on the other end. "Of course. Didn't you two say you were getting your marriage certificate? Why haven't we even seen a wedding photo yet?" I broke up with Natalie. I cut him off, my tone flat. His rambling stopped cold. For a moment there was nothing but silence before he stammered out. "We broke up." Yeah, just happened yesterday. From now on, if she's going to be somewhere, don't invite me. He seemed rattled by how calm I sounded, muttered a few awkward words of sympathy, then quickly hung up. Honestly, his reaction was only natural. In our entire shared friend circle on WeChat, everyone knew how excessively I pampered Natalie. I remember once during a group dinner last year, she casually mentioned craving a trending cake from the east side of the city. I drove through a thunderstorm to get it. When I returned, soaked to the bone, I still held the delicate cake box with both hands like it was treasure. Everyone laughed, saying I spoiled her too much, but I just toweled my hair and said, "She's still young, what's wrong with spoiling her a little?" She was 3 years younger than me, had a baby face, and I always instinctively treated her like a delicate little girl who needed protection. I stayed up multiple nights finishing her work proposals. Whenever she wanted name-brand clothes or designer bags, I paid without question. Her office drawer was always stocked with the heat packs I bought her. I practically took care of every detail of her life. Even her parents used to joke that I'd spoiled her into being completely dependent. All these years, I was like a tireless gardener, tending to a beautiful flower with everything I had, yet I never once asked myself, did she ever truly care about the one planting the seeds? After I hung up, I took a moment to think, then posted a tweet with the caption, "Long live singlehood." The image was of the rising sun outside my window, golden rays piercing through the clouds, just like I was finally breaking free from the chains of love. The moment I hit post, I felt oddly light, like a weight had been lifted from my chest. Within 3 minutes, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Friends and coworkers liked and commented, some shocked, some gossiping, most expressing concern, feeling more grounded. I got ready for work, until I saw a group message about a company team-building event. Natalie's name was right there on the list. I immediately applied for leave. Outside, the sun was shining. Tree shadows danced in the breeze. Maybe it's time for a trip to the seaside. Let the salty ocean wind carry away the last of these lingering clouds. Chapter 5. The beaches of Hawaii had always been an obsession buried deep in my heart. I remembered last winter, when I excitedly spent an entire month planning the trip, even buying us matching sun hats. This time, no one is going to interrupt us, she had promised me, full of conviction. Not even Victor. But just minutes before we were about to board the plane, Victor's call came in. I still remembered the pale look on Natalie's face after she answered. Victor got into a fight at a bar. He's in the hospital. I need to go check on him. She didn't even stop to consider how I felt. Without a second of hesitation, she dropped her suitcase and ran off. The Hawaii trip I had been dreaming of vanished. Just like that. Natalie did apologize afterward, but we both silently agreed never to bring up Hawaii again. Turns out, the turquoise sea and clear blue sky really are the best medicine for a wounded soul. I stayed in Hawaii for a week. Somehow, all those memories of Natalie felt like they were being washed away by the rhythm of the waves. I left the past behind and focused on the beauty around me. But of course, someone had to ruin it. Once Victor found out I'd broken up with Natalie, he started sending me updates of their time together. Sometimes it was a close-up of 2 straws in the same milk tea. Other times it was Natalie leaning her head on his shoulder. The captions were always vaguely flirtatious. "I'll be with you through everything. True love is staying, not chasing." I treated him like a digital pet, took screenshots every time, saving them like a collector. But today, I suddenly found it all meaningless. So I blocked and deleted him without hesitation. Chapter 6. On my first day back at work after the vacation, I took a longer route on purpose. The direct road to the office passed by Natalie's favorite coffee shop. Every morning before work, she'd stop there to get her coffee. At this hour, she'd probably be in line right now. Just the thought of bumping into her made me choose a detour, even if it meant walking 20 minutes more. When I arrived at the office, I saw my desk piled with small snacks, gifts from coworkers who'd heard the news. Seems word of the breakup had already made the rounds. After a week off, a mountain of work had piled up. As soon as I finished organizing my files, Ryan tiptoed over like he was sneaking into enemy territory. He studied my expression carefully, and once he saw I looked normal, he leaned in and whispered, "Boss, I heard you and Natalie had a falling out." Without even looking up, I corrected him. "Not a falling out, a breakup." Ryan scratched his head, looking like he wanted to say more but hesitated. "Then, what about the project between our team and her department?" "Follow the company process." I cut him off neatly. "Sign where signatures are needed. Business as usual. My relationship with Natalie won't affect work." Sure, our breakup hadn't been pretty. In fact, it had been downright messy. But I wasn't so petty that I'd sabotage her at work. Business is business. Emotions are emotions. I still knew where that line was. At the entrance of the break room, I bumped right into Natalie. The dark circles under her eyes were heavy. Her face was shockingly pale. I turned sideways to walk past her, but she suddenly reached out and grabbed my sleeve. "Kevin, it's been days now. You can't still be mad, right?" Chapter 7. I almost wondered if I'd heard her wrong. Natalie, Did you hit your head or something? We broke up. Do you understand what breakup means? My tone was firm, but she stubbornly blocked my path. Just because I didn't show up to register the marriage? I actually let out a laugh, out of pure frustration. She still didn't get it, and honestly, I didn't get it either. If Victor would always come first in her heart, then why didn't she just be with him? Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a few co-workers pretending to pass by while clearly eavesdropping. I said, I don't want to argue here, but remember this, when it's over, it's over. Stop showing up and making a scene. I shook her hand off, turned, and walked away without looking back. From that day on, I threw myself completely into work. Any tasks that required collaboration with her department, I handed off to someone else on the team. Every time I passed Natalie in the hallway, she'd slow her steps, looking at me like she wanted to say something, but I always looked right past her, like she was invisible, until Friday afternoon, when the old CEO suddenly called me into his office. Kevin, the position at the London branch is still available, he said, sliding a folder across the desk. You told me last time you needed to consider your relationship. That's no longer an issue, right? My fingers paused on the file. Half a year ago, I'd been in this exact same situation. Back then, Natalie had teary eyes and told me, long distance is too hard. I won't feel secure if we're apart. To ease her insecurity, I turned down a major promotion. I still remember the look of disappointment in the CEO's eyes that day, clear as if it had just happened. Now, I couldn't help but feel it was all laughable. The sacrifices I'd made for love, the compromises, I thought they meant something. Looking back, it was just self-inflicted sentimentality, a private little tragedy I staged for myself. No problem, I said crisply, signing my name without hesitation. I'm ready whenever you need me. Chapter 8. The paperwork for going abroad was processed quickly. The company scheduled my departure for just after the New Year holiday. On the eve of Chinese New Year, I was in a jewelry store at the mall, picking out a gold necklace, planning to surprise my mom during the holiday. I was leaning over the glass counter, studying the designs, when I suddenly heard a familiar voice behind me. Kevin. My back tensed instinctively. I didn't need to turn around to know exactly whose voice it was. Sure enough, when I turned, I saw Victor holding Natalie's hand, standing just a few steps away. Their fingers were tightly interlocked, and Victor wore a smug, triumphant grin. What a coincidence. Kevin. Natalie and I are picking out couple rings. As if afraid I hadn't noticed, Victor deliberately raised their joined hands. The matching rings on their ring fingers sparkled under the lights. Natalie instinctively tried to pull her hand away, but Victor tightened his grip, and she gave up. And to think, he added with a smirk, we have you to thank. If you hadn't stepped aside, who knows how much longer we would have stayed in denial. Victor's smile was full of mockery. He raised his brows at me like he was parading around with some grand prize. It was disgusting, his whole I won the trophy expression. Compared to him, Natalie's reaction was interesting. She kept her head low, eyes flickering nervously. When she caught sight of the scorn in my gaze, she even took an unconscious step back. How ironic. Just a few days ago at work, she was begging me to get back together. Now, she stood there clinging to another man like some delicate little bird. That level of two-faced switch-up would make even a Sichuan opera master blush. In public like this, I hadn't planned on saying anything nasty. I was going to walk away, but then I caught Victor's smug expression and changed my mind. Why let them save face? If this perfect couple wanted to put on a show in front of me, then as the ex, I might as well give them a proper review. I calmly adjusted my tie and let a slow, meaningful smile curve across my lips. You really like picking up what other people throw away, huh? That one line drained the color from both their faces. My eyes deliberately swept across Natalie. Well, makes sense. A cracked pot fits a broken lid. You two really are made for each other. Natalie just stood there, blank and speechless. Victor's face turned an ugly shade of green. His carefully maintained mask shattered, and he growled, Kevin, since when were you this bitter? So what if you talk tough? I'm the one standing next to Natalie now. Oh, I laughed lightly. Doesn't it sting hearing the truth? Bragging about a relationship you snatched like a homewrecker, is that your proudest moment? Victor reacted like a cat that just got its tail stomped. His voice jumped an octave. You don't get it. Natalie and I have been childhood sweethearts. If you hadn't gotten in the way. I cut him off slowly, deliberately dragging my words. Oh right, you were childhood sweethearts. Yet after all those years, Natalie still didn't choose to marry you. Why do you think that is? I gave a soft, mocking chuckle and shook my head. You're the only third wheel I've ever seen who's this proud of himself. Really, iconic. You. He clenched his fists so hard the veins on his arm bulged, but Natalie held him back with all her strength. That last sentence had struck like a knife, straight into the softest, sorest part of his ego. His face twisted, mouth hanging open, but no comeback came out. Natalie, meanwhile, had gone deathly pale, staring ahead like a ghost. around us. Other customers had already turned to watch. A few were whispering. Gossip was clearly brewing. A surge of satisfaction rolled through me. I watched their expressions shift like a stage play, then casually picked up the wrapped necklace from the counter. Wishing you both eternal happiness, and please, do the world a favor and stop dragging other people down with you. Chapter 9. At the New Year's Eve dinner table, my mom was piling food into my bowl while asking, "Why didn't you bring Natalie home with you?" I replied casually, "We broke up." She froze mid-movement. What? What happened? Everything seemed fine, why break up all of a sudden? I hadn't wanted to dump all that messy drama on my parents during the holidays, but they wouldn't let it go. They kept pressing for answers. With no choice, I told them everything. How I'd been stood up 5 times at the marriage registration office. Well done. My mom slammed the table, trembling with anger. She's unbelievable. Losing you is her loss, our gain. Don't feel bad. Son, I'll introduce you to someone better. Your dad knows a few good families too. My dad jumped in quickly. Yeah. Your Uncle Lee's daughter is great. She's even got a PhD. I chuckled helplessly and interrupted. Dad, Mom, I'm leaving for London right after the holiday. Can you please stop trying to play matchmaker? At the mention of my upcoming move abroad, my mom paused, then quietly placed a piece of braised pork into my bowl. Eat more, she said. Once you're in the UK, you won't get to taste your mom's cooking anymore. Her voice suddenly caught in her throat. I felt a pang in my chest and quickly lowered my head, shoveling rice into my mouth to hide my reddening eyes. In that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I'll work harder, earn more, and give my parents the life they truly deserve. Chapter 10. After dinner, I was in the kitchen doing dishes when the doorbell rang. My dad muttered, "Who comes knocking at this hour on New Year's Eve?" He peeked through the peephole, and his expression instantly darkened. "Son," he turned to look at me, clearly hesitating. I dried my hands and walked over. Through the peephole, I saw Natalie standing outside in the hallway. She was wearing the white down jacket I'd bought her last year, arms full of gift bags, shifting nervously from foot to foot. My dad looked at me, uncertain. "Do you want me to let her in?" "No," I said firmly, turning back toward the kitchen. "I don't want to see her." Outside, Natalie continued ringing the bell. The repeated chime echoed sharply through the quiet hallway. My mom frowned and glanced at the clock. "It's getting late. If she keeps ringing like that, the neighbors are going to start complaining." My dad sighed, and finally opened the door just a crack. "Natalie," he said, pulling his coat tighter against the cold air. "Kevin's not home. You should go now. It's freezing out." "I know he's home." Natalie's voice trembled with desperation. "Please, Uncle, just let me see him." Through the kitchen glass, I saw her frostbitten fingers gripping the doorframe, red and raw from the cold. "Just 5 minutes," she begged. "I just want to explain, then I'll leave." My dad scratched his head awkwardly, torn between her and me. But then my mom stormed up, pulling him aside and blocking the doorway, arms crossed. "Don't you have any shame?" she snapped. "You were dating my son while getting all flirty and tangled up with another man. Now you're back, clinging like a leech after the breakup. Have you no dignity?" I saw Natalie stagger back a step, disbelief written all over her face. The same woman who used to pamper her like a daughter was now staring at her like something filthy. I remembered how my mom used to dress up for Natalie's visits, how her voice would soften whenever she spoke to her. But now, this fierce, furious version of her, Natalie was seeing it for the first time. "My son treated you like a treasure for years, and this is how you repay him," my dad added. "Natalie, take these gifts and go. Don't come back again." My mom, already reaching for the door, shoved her gently outside while yelling, "Go, just go already." What a terrible omen for New Year's Eve. "Auntie, please, let me just talk to Kevin for a moment." But before Natalie could finish, my mom had already slammed the door shut. Chapter 11. My phone was buzzing with New Year greetings from friends and coworkers. Ryan called, sounding unusually excited. "Happy New Year, boss." "Happy New Year," I replied, while packing my luggage for London. "What's up?" "You're not gonna believe this," he said, struggling to hold back laughter. "Natalie stormed into the CEO's office today the moment she heard you were being transferred to London." I paused, my hand on the suitcase latch, then let out a chuckle. Why had I never noticed before how brainless Natalie could be? Did she think the company belonged to her or something? "What did the CEO do?" I asked, just in case. "Oh, he kicked her out on the spot," Ryan snorted. "Said if she threw one more tantrum like that, she could pack her bags and leave for good." I let out a quiet sigh of relief. This second chance, this opportunity I'd regained, I couldn't let it go to waste because of Natalie again. I stepped out onto the balcony. Down below, that thin silhouette was still lingering in the snow. Natalie kept blowing warm air into her hands, rubbing them together. Her nose was red from the cold, and she was still stubbornly staring up at my window, pale cheeks streaked with frozen tears. "Once upon a time, Even a tiny paper cut on her hand would make my heart ache. But now, watching her stand there in sub-zero temperatures on a snowy night, my heart was as still as dead water. That pitiful look, the trembling lips, the tear-filled eyes. Once, it would have shattered me. Now, it just felt ridiculous. Who was she putting on this tragic performance for? If she had really cared so deeply, then why had she thrown me aside for Victor again and again? I closed the balcony door, and with it, shut out the wind, the snow, and her. Chapter 12. Early the next morning, there was a knock at the door. Knock, 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 knock. I buried my head deep under the covers, but that annoying sound cut through everything and stabbed straight into my temples. My parents had gone out to visit relatives for the new year. I was the only one home. The sleep I had left was completely shattered. Frustrated, I flung off the covers and stormed to the door, still full of morning irritation. When I opened it and saw Natalie, my anger spiked instantly. I took a deep breath, but the fury that had built up overnight erupted like a flame. Natalie, do you even know what time it is? It's New Year's Day and you're banging on someone's door like this. What the hell is wrong with you? She froze mid-motion, one hand still raised, her wide eyes staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. I knew I didn't look great. Disheveled clothes, messy bed hair, and a face full of irritation, completely unlike the usual polished, gentle version of me she was used to seeing. But none of that mattered anymore. Natalie finally spoke, voice soft as a whisper. Kevin, are you still mad? Mad? I didn't even care anymore. The person in front of me wasn't worth the energy it took to feel anything. I answered coldly. You don't have the right to make me angry. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap, her voice growing smaller with every word. I couldn't reach you. You blocked my number and WeChat. You even took back the spare house key. God, I regretted opening the door at all. Listening to her say this nonsense was a complete waste of time. I reached out to close the door, but she suddenly shoved her shoulder into the crack. Don't close it, please. Just talk to me. I have nothing to say to you. Then I'm not leaving. Looking at her like this, I realized I wouldn't be able to get rid of her unless I gave in. And if the neighbors saw her standing outside like this, who knows what kind of rumors would start spreading. After a moment of internal debate, I stepped back. Fine, come in. I leaned against the sofa while Natalie dragged over a dining chair and sat across from me. She placed both hands neatly on her knees, sitting up straight like a skulkid about to give a presentation. Kevin, she said, taking a deep breath, let's get back together. I've thought it through. I only ever saw Victor as a little brother. The one I've truly loved, all along, has always been you. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. Then came a wave of pure irritation. Who did Natalie think she was? Expecting the world to revolve around her whims. When she was tangled up with Victor, she told me not to be petty, to be the mature boyfriend. Well, I didn't want to be mature. I didn't want to keep swallowing my pride again and again. I wanted to be free, so I stepped aside, let her have her happy ending. But now she had figured it out. Now she wanted to play the role of the devoted lover. She wasn't done clinging at the office, and now she was here, barging into my life again. Who the hell did she think she was? Some kind of princess? Natalie. I slowly sat up straight, meeting her eyes. What makes you think I'll just stand here forever, waiting for you to come back? She seemed completely lost in her own world, like she couldn't understand a word I was saying. She just kept going, as if reading from a script. Kevin, whether you believe it or not, the only person I've ever liked is you. That day at the mall, Victor was just trying to provoke you. I've never been in a relationship with him. Is that so? Then how would she explain all those intimate photos Victor sent me? I pulled out my phone and shoved it in Natalie's face, scrolling through the screenshots I had saved just for this day. To be honest, I'd been waiting for this moment. You wear a camisole and cuddle with your little brother. You share a single straw with your little brother. You kiss your little brother. Faced with the evidence, Natalie's face went from flushed to deathly pale. She couldn't utter a single word in defense. Fine, I said. Let's say all of that was just you and Victor putting on some elaborate show to provoke me. What about before that? Was it my fault we never made it to Hawaii? Did I force you to bail on our marriage appointment 5 times? Natalie, stop making excuses for yourself. Is it really that hard to admit you have no boundaries with the opposite sex? You love this kind of emotional game, don't you? On one hand, stringing along your so-called little brother. On the other, trying to keep your boyfriend on a leash. Tell me, Natalie, don't you find that disgusting? I'd hit the part she tried hardest to hide. Her face twisted in pain, but not from guilt, more like from the refusal to admit the truth. Victor was definitely at fault, but every one of his provocations had happened with Natalie's silent permission, even encouragement. All those lingering glances, the physical contact, the deliberate displays of intimacy right in front of me, and Natalie, acting like it was perfectly normal, made it seem like I was being petty. But she was the one who had lit the match. She was the reason our relationship crumbled. She was worse than Victor. I stood up, towering over her. Not every mistake, I said coldly, can be fixed with a pathetic little "I've thought it through." Suddenly, she threw her arms around me, trembling as she begged, "Kevin, I know I was wrong. Please, please don't leave me." But that long-lost touch, her body against mine, only made my skin crawl. I instinctively tried to pull away, but she escalated, standing on tiptoe to kiss me. Just as her lips were about to touch mine, I shoved her, hard. Natalie stumbled backward, lost her footing in her high heels, and collapsed onto the floor. She stared up at me in disbelief, like she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. I had already reached the edge of my patience. Not laying a hand on her was the last line I wasn't going to cross. I took a deep breath and stared coldly at the woman on the ground. 3 years of putting up with this kind of person. The joke's on me. I grabbed her by the wrist and dragged her to the front door. She tried to lunge back at me, but I flung the door open and shoved her out without a second thought. She kept pounding on the door, shouting desperately, "Kevin, open the door. I really know I was wrong. We can go register the marriage tomorrow." "Okay." I didn't care how the neighbors saw this anymore. Just being in the same room as her made my skin crawl. I rubbed my temples, took out my phone, and scrolled through my blacklist to find Victor's number. "It's me, Kevin," I said. "Natalie's having a meltdown outside my apartment. Either you come get her, or I'm calling the cops." Before he could reply, I hung up. Roughly 20 minutes later, Victor showed up at my door, panting and red-faced. He kicked the door a few times and shouted, "He won't even let you in the house. He doesn't give a damn about you. Why the hell are you still chasing after him?" Natalie kept crying, rambling about how she loved me and all that. Their screaming match lasted a good 5 or 6 minutes. I watched as Victor, half dragging and half carrying her, finally pulled her into the elevator. And just like that, silence. Chapter 13. Later, a friend told me that Natalie had fallen ill. She'd spent the entire night standing in the snow outside my building, unable to move on from the breakup, and eventually ended up in the hospital with a high fever. They said even in her delirium, she kept calling my name. Quite a few people tried to test the waters, asking if I wanted to go see her. I turned them all down. Later, I heard more from Ryan. Natalie and Victor were still caught up in their twisted mess. Victor, acting like a complete obsessive, started showing up at the company every other day. Eventually, the CEO had had enough, and decisively fired Natalie. I didn't ask about her again, didn't care anymore. Now, I sat on a plane bound for London, leaving behind the people and memories of the past. What awaited me was a bright, brand new life.